Hey y'all, Freeze Cracked here. It looks like it could rain again, but it's like 70 degrees here, so that part's good. And there's probably going to be some airplane noise, but oh well. Hey, several people had messaged me and complaining about that they've got a problem with working turtles. They've been making turtles and working turtles and having a problem with turtles and can't get rid of the turtles. So I don't have a turtle made, but what I thought I'd do is, this is a Georgetown, Flint, Texas nodule, and what I thought I would do is skin it in a manner to make it kind of like turtley, and then show you what to do about that. And bear in mind, I'm not teaching you a how-to with how to skin this, because this is not how I would skin it. I'm going to do it kind of semi-wrong on purpose so that I can then fix it for you. But basically, I'm just going to downward. You see that downward hit? That's the beginning of a good turtle. Why? Because it's downward. When you hit downward, you make steep slopes. And some of you may have seen online talking about when you're pressure flaking a little slab, about zigzagging it. And you may also have heard somebody say zigzag your regular rocks to get the cortex off. So let's try a little of that. Down, down, down. Oh, I'm buggering it up. Darn. Let me get off this and try and go down with it a little bit. I shouldn't have supported it right, because it doesn't help my illustration. Oh, that was a nice steep one. That one went in too good. It's kind of against my nature to massacre a piece of Georgetown like this, but oh well. Looking kind of steep and turtly. Oops. That did more good than I wanted it to. But oh well. You really don't need to braid when you're hitting above the edge, because I mean you're not hitting the edge, so why braid it? But one of the problems is sometimes the angles are not exactly right. I'm trying to go down to make it steep. That's the opposite of what you normally want to do. There are times when you do that, when you got a big wide piece and you got a really soft, terrible cortex, and you need to make sure you get the cortex off, because you can't do anything before you do. Some of that cortex, some of the Texas root beer cortex is so thick that you really can't, you can't take a flake that does any good until you get the cortex off. So with that kind of stuff, sometimes I've done sort of what you're seeing here. Although this is a pretty extreme example. Well, that's definitely a turtle. And we'll bring the edges kind of up to the middle and make it even worse. You know, that might be good enough for the purposes of showing you. Uh-oh. Ruined by a braider. And I don't feel like going inside the house to get another one, so now I'm going to be working with a crippled braider. All right. Ignore the square edge, because that's not part of my turtle, but there we go, and here we go, and it's kind of fat and turtly, right? All right. What you do is you start deciding for yourself what kind of point would you like to try and make, because what kind of points you want to make determines where you're willing to lose. Are you willing to lose some length? Are you willing to lose some width? Do you want to try and conserve both? Well, if you want to try and conserve both, what I always suggest is you try and attack your thing from a quote-unquote corner. And by that I mean don't hit directly on the ends and don't hit directly on the width to try and do your thinning, but go here, 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 or there, and especially at whichever end you think might end up being your tip, because you may be able to do what you need to do without taking too much of either your width or your length that way. One little secret that I don't remember having said yet on any of my videos, it's easier to thin a narrow, thick area. So it's counterintuitive, but sometimes if you're working a flake, well, this isn't a good example because this was an overshot, but if you're working a flake, like say this, I did this yesterday, sometimes you think to yourself, well, I want my tip to be thin, so I'll make this end to be the tip and this be the base. Wrong. It's easier to thin the tip because you tend to make it narrower. So sometimes it's better to make the thinner part your base, and on some point styles you want to go ahead and make your base first and then bring all this in and get it thin and all that kind of stuff. So I changed the subject on you a little bit. But anyway, so here we go. We've got this turtle, and I've decided arbitrarily that I've actually got a couple of platforms that are good to hit just like they are. But if you've brought your edges right back to the center line, then what you would do I have one like that? Not really. Darn, I didn't make it bad enough. What you would do is, I'll just do it with this one to make a point. We'll pretend this edge is at the center line. What you do is you take and tilt it not perfectly flat, but even downward a tiny bit, and you go straight down on it. Straight down on it, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a good platform angle to shoot back across it this way. So by tilting it down a little bit and hitting down on it, I didn't really want to take a lot off. By hitting down on it, I have raised that quite a bit. So now I want to get it really stiff, because we know one thing. We know that we got to get some thickness off this thing. So I flip it. So now I've got my platform, and now it's below the center line. The platform is below the center line. And I've got all this mass in here. And so I'm going to jam this thing in the back of my hand. And by the way, you could isolate this too if you wanted to. I jam it in the back of my hand. Make sure, that's why I do that sometimes. What do you think it did? Can you see that I just barely caught it on that abraded area? Hopefully you can see that. All right, here's what it did. It is an overshot. It came to there. And yeah, it's partially because of my hit, but it's also a lot because of my support. All right, and if you notice, that's a little flatter. We're trying to send the turtle back to the pond. This is so much fun saying stuff like that. I don't know what it is about me that I love talking crap so much. I just like, just completely destroying the language. Ooh, look at this hill. Ah, this is cool. I braided the heck out of that. You see my little mountaintop right there? Try and memorize what it looks like, because you ain't gonna see it much longer. All right, I already have below the center line. If I didn't, then what do? I would have gone over here and tapped it down, hit it downward and raise that up like it is. But I've got a ridge there too. Ridges are your friend, and below the center line is your friend. And notice, not too much below the center line, maybe halfway between the center line and the face, or a little bit higher. Don't get up at the center line when you want thickness. Okay, so again, support underneath, jam it in your hand, hit it a couple of times to make sure, and see what it did. Because of the support, it came through right over to there. So that's another, I don't know, some people call that crap ultra shots, but to me it's splitting hairs. It went to the other edge. And that hill's gone and it's a little flatter. And by doing that, I created another ridge here, but the problem is, as you can see, there's a low spot right there. So I have one of two choices. I can eliminate that low spot and hit on that ridge, or I can hit somewhere else and try and avoid that issue, whichever I prefer and whichever I think will work best. So that's when you start looking at it and you say to yourself, which will work best? Let's try and eliminate the low spot and see what happens. All I'm doing is braiding down on it. And that should take some little flakes, and I don't know if you can see it, but a little flake took with the abrader, ran to there, because these coarse abraders will take flakes, and it hinged right there in that little low spot. So that's a problem. But, and it's still not gone, that concavity is still not gone. So but I can hit it hard and it'll be gone. But instead of doing that, and I hate to just tell you to cheat on everything, I'm not going to tell you to cheat on everything. Here's what I would probably do right now, but it takes some experience. I would support it, hit downward and just barely catch it, and it would wrap and run right over that mountain. But if you'll notice, there's thickness on this side too, and there's a ridge there. So I can kill two birds with one stone by hitting this first and doing something over here, which will at the same time, if it does good, be raising that edge to make this not as steep and make it more likely for success on that side. And so that's what I'm going to do. But before I do that, I'm noticing, oh my gosh, look how thick this end is. And there's a great platform there, but there's a good platform there. I got all kinds of things I can do. Let me see. I think this looks like an old ding that put on it. I'm just going to hit that on that square edge right there and get rid of that if I can. See a little hit? Lowered it a little bit. You don't normally hit on square edges, but that was protruding. Okay, so what was I going to do? Oh, I was showing you. This is not good to hit because it's boogered up. It's too low, and there's a concavity behind it, so that's no good. So, I mean, I got things that I can hit in the center that would take out thickness, but you don't like to do that normally because you don't want to leave weight on your ends and start thinning the center too much. I'm going to try a crazy little hit obliquely along here on that right there that's a little bit above the center line, but I'm going to tilt it down a little bit to artificially lower it. Can you see what I'm doing? Nod your heads if you can see. I'm jamming my hand in the back of my leg. I've got this jammed into my hand. I'm going kind of obliquely, and I've tilted it down a little bit to lower that below the center line. What do you think it did? Okay, you see where I hit it? I just caught it right there and I hit obliquely. What do you think it did? Well, what it did was it overshot. And in doing so, it took out, see, I mean, flakes love to follow ridges. There's a ridge. It ran about equidistant on both sides of it, and it came all the way down here and overshot right on the end, but didn't blow any of the end off. And so it thinned this end too, a lot. See? Isn't that cool? And this is what flakes tend to do. You know, big flakes, they tend to do it. They follow the ridges and they kind of space themselves out underneath the ridges to run sort of the same depth, and sometimes they taper towards the ends. On some of the overshots they don't, they actually get thicker on the ends. But anyway, so that really isn't looking very turtly anymore on this particular face. And at the moment I've got 2 flake scars across it that flattened it. So anyway, I'm just trying to get the knife edges off this. I'm not really setting up anything, but I like to try and remember to get my knife edges off of stuff, because if I stick it in the back of my hand and hit it with a knife edge on it, I tend to remember right after I do that. It's kind of a problem. Okay, I'm taking too much time and I'm talking too slow. What time is it? We're already into 15 minutes. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, it took like 2 flakes in 15 minutes. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm going to turn it off, turn it right back on, and you'll be right back with me, and then I'll try to quit blathering so much.